Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the Startup Coach, founder of TorontoStarts, one of the largest startup communities in Canada. And with me today is Rand Abou Ras, co-founder of uCast. Welcome, Rand.
Thank you so much for having me, Craig.
It's great to have you. We've met before. You were just mentioning before off air about our networking events and stuff. But tell us about uCast.
Yeah, so in very short term, uCast is a marketplace for podcasters and advertisers to be able to find each other, meet each other, create CPA, CPM, and hybrid deal flows and manage them very easily, very quickly, and very securely.
So I'm going to get into a lot of that in a bit, but I like to start off understanding who the entrepreneur was growing up. Were you
Mhm.
a handful for your parents? Were you studious, into music, sports, socializing? Who was young Rand?
Well, I am a middle child, and my older brother, he's a genius, and he's always been extremely talented and extremely smart, um, a very big innovator. So I was like the black swan of the family, especially in my early years. I was not studious at all. I hated going to school. I hated learning anything, to be honest. I just wanted to go out and do. But now looking back, that's all I ever wanted to do is just like go out and do things, create things, start things. I've always been into business, and my brother does a lot of things. He's an artist. He's an inventor. He's studying architecture now. But when he was young, I think when he was like 13, 14, he used to create these amazing murals. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, these, he can sell them and he can create, brand for himself. I think I was 12 at that time. And so I found someone um, in the mall who's also creating those murals and selling them for like $100 at a time. And that was in the Middle East. And I told him, hey, my brother has these amazing murals. I showed him a bunch. Would you be able to mentor him or be kind of like a manager for him? And then for every piece he would help you sell, he would give you like a certain percentage. And he was like, yeah, of course. And then I went to my dad and I told him the story. And he was like, you did what now? And I'm like, yeah, I think it would be, really cool for him. He can like earn a couple of, bucks and build some reputation. And my dad was like, okay, let's do it. And that was my first, entrepreneurial thing that I did. And then from there, I was just like kept on continuing and growing and doing different things. But yeah, that was mostly my childhood, just doing, a bunch of weird things that didn't make sense.
So it sounds like you were always entrepreneurial.
Yes.
So can you tell me what led you to uCast?
Yeah. So I graduated in September of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And as you can imagine, it was not a fun time to graduate. I was perplexed. I'm like, do I apply for full-time jobs? Do I do my own thing? Do I take a break? Like, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. And I came to Canada in 2016. So in 2016, I started university. I graduated in 2020 and it's always like been studying. I haven't had time to explore the Canadian environment on my own. I didn't have any time to really do anything of my own here in Toronto. And so I decided, you know what, I don't want a full-time job. I ended up rejecting a couple of offers and I decided I want to just, for a year, try to do my own thing. If I'm able to figure it out, I will continue. If not, I will go head hunting for, full-time positions. So I learned how to do UX, UI in that year. And then I started going to different events. I started exploring different problems, interviewing, like, I think I interviewed like 200 people at one point for just like random different topics, trying to figure something out. And I remember my first idea was creating a digital business card app, especially like now online. Um, and then I discovered that LinkedIn had the exact same product. They just deactivated it last year, like 2 years ago. And I'm like, shoot, okay, that's not going to work. So I was like, okay, it's time to pivot. And that was like around November, December. And then I started going into social audio. And that was like when Clubhouse was booming. And a lot of people were talking about podcasting. And I was like, okay, there's something interesting there. And I've always been, I've loved podcasting since like 2, 3 years ago. I've been listening to them consistently. So yeah, I went into the industry, and ever since then, I've discovered a lot of opportunities, and that's how uCast was born.
So I like to say that opportunity cost is infinite, meaning if you're working on uCast, then you're not working on any number of other opportunities. So you
Mhm.
run around trying to figure out what niche you wanted to fill and what the problem you wanted to solve. Why this opportunity versus anything else? What attracted you to this problem?
Okay, I have I love this question because a lot of people don't realize the amazing industry that is social audio or audio in general. So I'm going to go a little bit in depth here because I think there's a lot to talk about. But when it comes to content creation, a lot of or the in the past 5 years, a lot of the content creation forums or the viral content creation forums have been in video forms. So things that are visual. So, longer YouTube videos, sometimes webinars, whatever form of content that is. It's Audio was never really popular. But then TikTok came into place, and then we started shifting into shorter forms of video. And the longer forms of video were not disliked, but they were not as popular anymore. And there was a shift in consumer behavior from my attention span for a video can go for an hour or maybe 2 hours to my attention span for a video is not going to go for more than 5 minutes. And with TikTok, not even 3 minutes at this point, right? So we started going into that very short and viral forms of video creation. And we wanted something to replace the longer videos, and that's where audio came into place. Audio has a really cool The audio space is really cool because it plays into our psychology of also habit buildings. So whenever we are looking at content, we usually want something to essentially put in the back burner while we're doing work. And once we create that habit of listening to something as we're doing work, whether it's music or audio, we start becoming less interested in the visual and more interested in just the words. And catching these small things during a podcast that could be interesting here and there. And we've seen that behavior over the past 2 years has spiked up. So the audio industry in general has been very interesting in the past couple of years with COVID, with social audio coming into place as well, and live audio. There's been so many opportunities that have been not touched upon. And again, with the virality of the smaller or shorter length videos, I think audio has a very good opportunity to take over the longer forms of content, which it hasn't done yet. But I do think audio or longer form audio is going to be the next big thing in content creation.
So, what would you call short form audio versus long form? Where is the divider?
Yeah, so short form audio is essentially like those 5 minute clippets of, I heard the piece of news today. I want to talk about it. I'm going to go on, Clubhouse. I'm going to go on my podcast, wherever it is, create very small sprints of audio. Or I'm going to create a longer podcast and go to an app like Listen, LISN, and essentially create small clips of that podcast and start sharing those smaller clips so that as a listener, I'm only listening to maybe 3 minutes of different topics that I'm talking about rather than 1 hour of, a whole podcast that talks about a variety of different things.
And I know someone who was talking to me about doing a 2 minute interview
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and my immediate reaction was that's too short. You need about 10 minutes. You need intro, outro, a little feedback on who it is you're talking to, and then the question, and then whatever answer or whatever statement they're doing. However, everyone else is saying 2 to 5 minutes is the way to go.
2 to 5 minutes is it's interesting because it's digestible content, right? And we've I used to think videos could not be 2 to 3 minutes either, and you cannot actually consume content in 2 to 3 minutes. But TikTok completely disproved that. In 60 seconds, I'm able to get a whole view of a topic. And then if you want to go in depth into that topic, there could be other means of resources, right? But TikTok completely disproved the theory that content cannot be digestible in 2 to 3 minutes or even less than 60 seconds.
Yeah, I most of the stuff we do here is long form content, and
Mhm.
I have to figure out how much work I'm willing to put into taking, sound bites, video snippets of, our interviews or the other webinars we do to break that down to release that as other content because
Mhm.
it's a significant work to take an hour long interview and make 10 2 minute snippets out of it because
Mhm.
you really got to do a lot of edits or outsource it
Mhm.
to get it down. So Is there anything you'd recommend? I know we're a little off topic here,
Yeah.
for doing for that for people.
Yeah. So my preferred method and what I do with my podcast is, we have the hour long or 45-minute long interview with an entrepreneur. And, we talk about very different topics. So, we start with talking about what they're working on, their personal life, certain topics that they're interested in. And so, there's this app. I talked about it before. It's called LISN. It's on the App Store and Android. I love it. I love the founder. I actually also interviewed the founder in the last episode. And essentially, you just literally upload your RSS feed, or they would upload your RSS feed for you. And then listeners would listen to the podcast and then clip certain clips from the podcast. So you, as a podcaster, you're not doing it, but listeners are doing it and taking their most, or the most interesting clippets of that podcast and then uploading it or clipping it onto listen. And people just listen to those clips. And if they're interested in listening to the entire podcast, they can go on the podcast. But you can do it even yourself. If your listeners are not doing it, you can do it yourself. You can clip those podcasts very easily. It takes less than 5 minutes. If you know which parts you want to clip. Doesn't take a lot of editing, actually no editing at all. So it's been one of my favorite apps when it comes to short form podcasting.
Yeah, I usually do very little editing when it comes to the podcast, as much as possible. Maybe take some ahs, and some of my weird kind of noises, like I'll edit that out.
Yeah.
And but other than that, really try to keep it as possible. The only time I really do those edits is if I'm trying to hit YouTube short 1 minute. So I'm trying to get your statement that is actually a minute and a half long
Mhm.
to a minute with the same concise piece. So that's a little bit of
Mhm.
work. But let's get into uCast. What actually does uCast do?
Yeah. So before we go into uCast, let's talk about the problem of that uCast is solving and why did we solve that problem? So 97% of podcasts were not making money. And we started looking at why we're 97% of podcasts not making money and why we're only 3% making, a lot of money. Like talking about Joe Rogan, Call Her Daddies. We're talking about Jordan Peterson, all the Wondery podcasts. So we wanted to go into those podcasts that have maybe 1,000 listeners, maybe even less, but have very targeted audiences and have been doing it for like 4 years straight, right? So how can we start monetizing these podcasts? So essentially what we found is that it's not that nobody wants to pay for these podcasts or monetize these podcasts. It's just discoverability. And the podcasting industry is so terrible that the opportunity cost of marketing on social media is a lot better than going to explore podcasts. And there hasn't been, again, a platform to help in discoverability. So that's number one. Number two is businesses don't know that they can advertise on podcasts, or they might hear a podcast advertisement, but they don't think as a startup or as a small to medium business, it's relevant to them or it's cost effective. And they don't know what the return on investment looks like. Because again, there's very little data, or it's not that there's very little data, it's just there isn't public data, right? And unless you're going to look for it, it's very hard to see it in your face in media because media just doesn't talk about it as much. So we wanted to essentially combine these two problems along with security and communication between advertisers and podcasters, because a lot of the comments that we've received from both podcasters and advertisers is we're so scared of scams. We're scared that we're going to put in all this time and effort, and then someone's going to scam us, or they're not going to adhere their part of the deal, or whatever it is. So we wanted to provide essentially accessibility, usability, and security, and that's how uCast was built. And it's very easy to use. It's actually so my team and I, we designed the user experience, and we designed everything. And it's as simple as an advertiser you would go, or as a business you would go on, you would register, you would put in your business information, and then put the category that or industry that your business operates in. And once you decide you want to start a campaign, you have an option of starting 3 different types of campaigns: a CPM campaign, which is the cost per milli, so cost per 1,000 listeners. And it's the most, it's a fixed rate campaign. You have the CPA campaign, which is an affiliate campaign. So like you would give the podcaster a code and tell them, hey, you'll get a commission or a percentage of sales. Or you have a hybrid deal where you can put some fixed cost as well as a promo code and commission so that you can get like the best of both worlds and you're not risking it all. And then once you decide which campaign you want, you would put in your campaign parameters, literally less than 2 minutes. And then our algorithm would do essentially a search and gives you they matched podcasts that would potentially give you the highest return on investment based on category, campaign goals, budget, all of that. And then you choose whichever podcast you want to send an offer to. You send an offer, and that's pretty much it. So it takes less than 5 minutes to actually start a campaign, versus we actually did an experiment, and it takes up to 3 months to actually find the podcast, get it, and be able to send an offer and create a campaign. So we're essentially decreasing that time from 3 months to 5 minutes. The podcaster side is even simpler than that, where you just upload your podcast information, your RSS feed, and then proof of analytics. And then you list your podcast, and then you just wait for offers to come in. You have the choice of accepting or rejecting the offer. And then once you accept the offer, you can chat with the advertiser, send them audio clips of potential advertisement, or talk to them about the advertisement, and then the deal goes through. Now, the cool thing about this is we also provide contracts that are not benefiting more group than the other, contracts that is binding for both, and that it's adhering that both parties are protected equally. And that the advertiser is not taking advantage of the podcaster, and the podcaster is not taking advantage of the advertiser, which was one of the biggest fears that we found with podcasters seeking advertisement from random companies. So yeah, that's uCast in short.
Why do you think it's so hard for podcasters to find advertisers? And is it important for, you've dealt with a lot of podcasters. Is it
Mhm.
usually important for the podcaster to find the right advertiser, or do they just want any advertiser?
Yeah. So our theory and our methodology is targeted advertisement, right? So if you, as a podcaster, let's say you're talking about, you have a knitting podcast or a fishing podcast, and suddenly you hear a baby diapers advertisement, the listeners are going to go like, what the fuck, why are you talking about baby diapers and a knitting or fishing podcast? So ideally, if you want high return on investment for your campaign, or you want good numbers in a fishing podcast or a knitting podcast, you want to talk about fishing equipments or fishing resources or a company that is doing something cool, right? One of my favorite podcasts that has, in my opinion, one of the best ad styles, or host live read ad styles, is Tech Meme Ride Home. Um, they essentially embed all their advertisement into their storytelling. It is all related to the topics they talk about. It is beautifully done so that it feels so natural. It doesn't feel like they're pushing it down my throat as a listener to buy something. And it's all related to what they're talking about, which is, again, is very important, because if I'm listening to a podcast and you recommend a product to what I'm listening to, I'm 50% more likely to actually go there and at least check out that product. And that's already 50% more likely to get a conversion rates than social media marketing. Because on social media, let's say you're scrolling on, Instagram or Twitter, and then you find, an advertisement that could be of your interest, whatever you're into, it's still a little bit down your throat. And it's also so concentrated that you can find like 5 of the same ads from different companies just right after each other when you're scrolling, right? Which is very unattractive. So that's why it's very important to have the right match of podcast to advertisement so that it feels natural. It's part of the storyline, and you get higher conversion rates as a podcaster and as an advertiser.
Yeah, I'm don't usually look for advertisers or look for sponsors, but people do
Mhm.
reach out to me a fair bit, and I turn down most of them because I don't feel either the model they want to together with is right for me, or that it's not a right fit for my audience. And the sponsors I do have, the partners I do have, are always pleasantly surprised about the engagement, what they're getting back out of it. We meet monthly to make sure that they're getting the engagement and what that they want. And it's not
Mhm.
just podcasts. So I think everyone's a little bit different because you have a blog and you have a podcast and you have an app.
Mhm.
You're probably integrating all of those as part of uh, your package and your offer and your media presence. Same
Mhm.
thing with Toronto Starts. This is the Startup Talk podcast, Canada's startup podcast, and you know we want to talk about business owners and the people who support business owners and
Mhm.
people that approach them. And so the partners that we have worked out really well. And I'll mention some of them later. I don't really, but other than that, we've only had a couple, and we don't really do advertising, but we're starting to do. Like today, I'll do something. I'll mention one of our partners later on
Mhm.
because they add value, and it's part of a package that I do. Overall presence around Toronto Starts, webinar, blog post, newsletter, podcast. And that
Yeah.
becomes a package. So when you're dealing with, long story short, when you're dealing with other podcasters, do they have like an offering like that, or is it strictly podcast advertising?
It's really case by case. It really depends on the size of your podcast and how long you've been doing it, and if you're doing it full time or not. I've seen podcasts who are very early on, who don't have anything essentially, just started and they're looking for like some deals to make a little bit of money to sustain them. I've seen podcasts with like 50,000 plus listeners who have like social media, who have Twitter, who have like the entire package deal, and they only accept deals if it's part of the entire package. And I've seen, medium podcasts who are just like, we're just looking for CPM campaigns, right? So I've seen different cases. Our platform caters towards the, podcasts who strictly want CPM campaigns, or the smaller podcasts who are looking to, who maybe not have, they don't have 1,000 listeners, maybe they have 100 or 200 listeners, and advertisers don't feel like it's worthwhile to do a CPM campaign. So they want to choose like a CPA campaign and still try to get some commission. So we're catering mostly towards the long tail of the market.
And that makes a lot of sense because
Mm-hmm.
I think, I've been following podcasting and monetization around it for a while now, and there's so many struggles with it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that podcasters are really bad at marketing?
um, I don't think that they're bad at marketing. I think just podcasting is so difficult that it takes a lot of your time and energy that you might not have time for marketing, and being able to get advertisers. Um, I don't think people realize how difficult it is to create engaging audio content. Because if you don't capture your audience in the first 5 minutes, they're not going to stay and listen. And usually 70% of listenership drops right after that 50% mark of the audio. So, how do you create engaging content? Is Takes a lot of time, takes a lot of planning. And it's very difficult to actually make time for marketing and to be able to get those advertisements. So that's what uCast really is helping with, is like, you don't need an agent. You don't need to pay someone to do it. You don't even need to do it yourself. You just wait for it to come to your lap, right? And you can just focus on content creation. And that's essentially our value. It's like, how do we allow creators to make money while they focus on their craft of creating good audio and good content? You're muted.
So, what kind of reporting analytics does the podcaster get slash the advertiser get from you?
Yes. So right now we're working on a bunch of things. So, the regular, how many listeners, till what point did they stay and listen? Did they actually have a chance to listen to your advertisement if you put an end roll? So just like the basic analytics, demographic, age, location, the very basics, but we're also working on a return on investment algorithm, which essentially takes your podcast's history, with different advertisement campaigns, and essentially is able to predict what the return on investment for certain companies from certain industries is going to look like. So it's like a predictive ROI algorithm, so that advertisers feel a little bit more confident when they submit an advertisement for a specific podcast, right? So if let's say again, you're a diapers company, and you want to advertise on a knitting podcast for some reason, or a wide variety of general podcasts, then the algorithm is going to tell you, hey, your chances of return on investment is this much based on history and based on our analytics, versus if you're going to be advertising on a baby related podcast, your return on investment spikes up and is suddenly at 90%. So that's, I think, the piece that we're working on that is very unique as well, that we haven't really seen in other podcast monetization platforms.
What does your business model look like?
Whew. We're so early to give a solid answer. It's a lot of trial and error. We are gonna try the commission model of charging taking five between 5 to 10% of the campaign from the podcaster, not from the advertiser. We're gonna try a hybrid of subscription and commission, like Shopify does, where you pay $15 to $30 a month, and then they only take like less than 1% of each sale. And we're going to try a fully subscription model and just see from trial and error from different groups which one works the best. And then from there, decide which is the business model that we're going to run with long term.
What if either party in a non pay per click kind of method is unhappy with the arrangement? Can they back out anytime? Do you hold the money in trust? Let's just say someone advertises on Startup Talk podcast through your
Mhm.
platform and they're not happy. They're like, damn it, Craig, didn't like the read, didn't like this, didn't like that. What can they do?
Yeah. So we say as soon as the first advertisement. So the way it works is you as an advertiser, once the podcaster accepts the offer, we essentially withdraw the money, and we hold it. We give 50% upfront to the podcaster. And then that way they're in contact with the advertiser, and they're able to go back and forth, give them examples of live reads so that the advertiser can essentially approve on it. And once the advertiser approves on it, they can go forward with it. So essentially, we're allowing very little space for that scenario to happen because we're able to, monitor the communication and make sure that both sides are adhering to, the terms. And then once the advertisement is 100% done, so after the end of the campaign, then we give the rest, 50% of the money back to the podcaster. If for any reason the advertiser is not happy, then we're able to hold that 50%, assess the case, see why the advertiser is not happy, and be able to return that 50% back to the advertiser. Now, something that we want to make very, very clear is that we're not here to guarantee results. It's not that we're not here to guarantee results. We're here to make sure that we're connecting you and giving you the best environment to create the best campaigns you can with the podcaster, right? There are certain scenarios with podcasting or with content creation in general where sometimes for some reason the podcaster is having an off month and your advertisement could be in an off month where for some reason listenership is low because of some economic thing that is happening, an external factor that we have absolutely no control over, right? So there are scenarios that we cannot control and there are scenarios that we can control. We're going to make sure that we can manage, or we are going to manage all the things that we can do internally, to make sure that both users have the best experience. But if it's an external situation that is out of our hands, we're also not responsible or liable for those.
So this episode goes out on Monday, August 30th. When does your open beta start or closed beta?
Yeah,
Whatever it is.
so our controlled beta starts mid-September. So we're opening our beta sign up actually on Monday as well. So you can go on our website ucast.xyz to sign up both as an advertiser and podcaster. And again, that's going to be opening on our beta page on Monday. And then for the public beta, we are going to be releasing our public beta in December, somewhere between December and January. The reason why we're doing a closed environment test is because we also want to make sure that our product, is well thought through, has quality assurance testing. The database is secure, payment is secure. So just doing, the regular startup product testing before we launch it publicly, and also make sure that the user experience is really good, and the user experience, or get feedback from users on how we can improve before our public launch.
What type of people are you looking for your controlled beta? Let's start with podcasters.
Yeah. So we're looking in the business vertical. So any podcast that falls under the business stream. So it can be tech, it can be operations, data, anything that falls under business really works. And then for advertisers, any advertisers again that want to advertise in the business stream, again, that also works. But we are going to focus on that vertical because it's the one that we've seen is most popular, or we've gotten most requests for in the past couple of months. So we want to explore that and then move on to different categories.
Startups and entrepreneurs always like to talk about hustle. What are
Hmm.
you doing to get traction and build your audience?
Oh, I have I'm on Twitter space every morning at 8 a.m. With a bunch of different other tech Gen Zs. We talk about the latest tech news. It's called Morning Tea. So we talk about the latest tech news that day, what's happening, and then we give our inputs. It's also a chance for us to talk every day about certain news that we have from our company, our personal lives, or our podcast. So that's the first thing. I am very active on Twitter daily. I have actually really cool audience. Even though it's small, I focus on quality audience. I have um, really amazing people who follow me and I follow. So that's awesome. Clubhouse, I'm not as active on Clubhouse, but I'm trying to be with the startup podcasting and VC community. Um, and Reddit. Yeah, I'm very involved in Reddit and Discord communities as well.
Yeah, I've been active in Reddit recently too. A lot of people, it seems like a very untapped resources for more startups. Let's talk about your funding situation. Are you bootstrapping? Are you looking to raise? Are you post raise?
Yeah, so we are bootstrapping. We did win a competition in May that granted us $25,000, which is amazing. So that was like our pre-seed to get our company going. With that money, we were able to grow our team to 5 full-time and three part-time. Of course, we're not getting paid. It's all based on equity, but it also gave us some credibility. We were able to finish building our product completely in house, which again is incredible. We were able to get some legal counsel as well. We are looking to raise in somewhere between October and November after our controlled beta and after we have some data. We are looking to raise around $500,000, and we call it the bridge between pre-seed and seed. So um, that's going to be our first funding round, depending again on how the controlled beta goes. And then from there, hopefully that can guarantee us our first $1 million in revenue in the next 18 months, and then go to our seed and so on and so forth.
Speaking of funding, did you know that you can raise up to 1.5 million per year with equity crowdfunding? According to Entrepreneur Magazine, only 0.05% of all startups receive VC funding. Now, there's a solution for the other 99.95% of startups. Equivesto is a Canadian Equivesto crowdfunding platform that helps innovative, driven, inspired Canadian businesses raise the capital they need to grow and succeed through their community source investment platform. With Equivesto, companies can turn their extended community of followers, friends, supporters, and customers into investors. To find out more, go to equivesto.com/TorontoStarts or click the chapter link in your podcast app. Speaking of advertising, I like to share both successes and failure. So
Mhm.
there's a chance that others won't make the same mistake. Can you tell us a time where you screwed up and made the wrong pivot or startup decision?
Uh, oh, many small things, a lot of small things, but I think the biggest lesson I've learned, not only as an entrepreneur, but also as a young female who is starting, you know, fresh out of university. Um, I used to be very assertive, and then somehow I became, a little bit more passive aggressive, simply because, when you're a woman and you're assertive, instead of being called, a boss, you are called a bitch. So that got to me. As again, I'm 22, so as a young woman, being called that, the past couple of years, just by being, like very assertive, it it really affected me personally, and so I tried to switch my leadership style. And it became a little bit more passive, which meant that a lot of people essentially did what they wanted, and I would just allow them to do whatever they wanted, which led to a lot of failures, um, and a lot of lack of organization and lack of operation, lack of scalability, all of that. And so I had to relearn how to be assertive, how to communicate well, how to get my point across. If someone does not agree with my opinion, I will hear you out. But in the end, there's a very big difference between someone being a team member and then you being a leader. It's your vision. Um, it's your startup, And if someone is interjecting and someone does not think it's the right decision, in the end, it's your vision, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. There's absolutely there's no right or wrong turn that you can take your startup. There's only where you want to take your startup, right? And that can differ, and you can have 100 different forks in front of you, right? So just sticking true to your vision, not letting people's negative opinions really affect you, and being able to be, your most authentic self when leading. I think that was the biggest, biggest lesson I had to learn. And also how to lead as a woman. A lot of the times, I used to think if someone's validating my business or validating me, it's because I'm a woman. But also, if someone is rejecting me, it's because I'm a woman, right? So it's like taking that perspective out and looking at yourself as an entrepreneur, and not, not being not personalizing that experience, and taking things really at face value and nothing deeper than that. I think I'm very over analytical, and I really think about things deeply, and I try to over analyze everything. So just literally take everybody's opinion as face value and nothing more. That was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn. And it was a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, it is a hard lesson to learn. Like, haters are going to hate. And whether it's your idea, whether it's because you're the boss, whether it's because you're a woman, whether it's whatever, you're successful and they're not, people are going to call you names. They're going to try and knock you down. They're going to not like what you're going to do. And you're going to have to just push that aside, because those people are
Mhm.
going to be those people no matter what. And hopefully, if you have a couple of naysayers in your organization or with you, you can convince them otherwise and move on. Otherwise, you have to
Mhm.
let them go. But you touched on something else there. Finding your authentic self and leading is so important. And entrepreneurs often question themselves because, when they're pitching, when they're talking to other people, people love or hate their idea. And you're going to, and I've dealt with so many entrepreneurs where, you know, after going out and pitching, they come back to me and say, I hate this guy, or I hate that guy. You know what that jerk said to me? It's like, okay. But sometimes those people are going to be those people, but we have to come back and have counter arguments for them and grow a thicker skin and come back and say, okay, they
Mhm.
don't like the idea, they don't like this, they don't like that. Not everything is about me.
Yeah.
And kind of try and put that aside. And I've seen so many entrepreneurs, if they take it so personally, it really wears you out fast, because
Yeah.
you're dealing with this emotional roller coaster around all that stuff. And especially when it comes to looking for funding and dealing with investors, if
It's tough.
the yeah, the wrong investor is always going to say no, and it has nothing to do with you most of the time.
Mhm. Let me tell you actually a couple more mistakes, because I think that was a little bit more general and personal, but there's a little couple of more mistakes that I made more on a founder level and entrepreneurial level that I think are also very important to talk about. So number one, don't hire someone just because they are the first person to be interested in your business. And that was a very big mistake that I made with my first potential co-founder. It was the first person that said yes to me, not necessarily the person I wanted on my team. And because they were the first person that said to me, and I was, kind of desperate to have a technical co-founder, someone who knows how to code and someone who can help, bring my vision to reality. I immediately said yes. And I was very lucky to have a friend who also was a software engineer who interviewed him and said, this guy knows not like this guy is not going to help you take that vision and make it a reality, right? And I noticed that also with other team members. It's like as soon as someone would say yes, I would just immediately welcome them on and then realize that was the wrong decision. So not just because someone says yes means that you should bring them on, and it means that they're the right fit for your company. um, Make sure that you have a list of characteristics, personal characteristics, and technical skills and soft skills that you want them to have. And if they don't meet that list, no matter how many times they say yes, even if they're doing it for free, do not bring them on. Do not compromise, because their product and your quality of work is going to be compromised as well. um, don't give up equity so easily. Don't hand out equity just because someone is working for free. If someone's volunteering to work because they want to learn, try to pay them a bonus, try to do something, but do not just hand them like 10% of your company. Um, And yeah, know how to value your company, know how to value the future of the product based on industry, based on demand, based on traction, based on all of these factors, and know that equity is always going to be more expensive than any check you can pay to someone. And don't outsource your product, no matter what. Do not outsource your product. I tried to do that in the beginning. If you have the money and you're able to do it well, do it. If you have like $5,000 and you're trying to build a whole product for $5,000, it's usually not going to be good. But those are the biggest lessons and mistakes I've made as well.
There's a lot to unpack in all that. You know, I always picking the right first key members and co-founders is so important. And I don't know how many startups I've had to talk to that come along where there's two co-founders or one co-founder and come and talk to me and saying there's an extra, a third, or they're just not doing. They agreed to do this, they're not doing it. You know, I've even had talked to two co-founders where the third said, "You guys go and make this startup successful, and once you're up and running and making a lot of money, I'll come in and take over."
Oh,
And, and like that was not kind of the agreement they kind of signed on for, and so they all end up going to lawyers and whatnot, and it becomes a nightmare because you didn't think about that ahead of time, and having those tough co-founder conversations early on is so important because otherwise you're going to get yourself
absolutely.
in so much trouble. I've also the outsourcing. You know, some people do it just to get started, but when they do it a year later, they're rewriting their own code with their own team. It all
Exactly.
happens every time.
Mhm.
So, you know, some people do it just so they can get that next round of investment. They need an MVP, they need something, and then it's at a throwaway cost. So people need to understand that going into it. Now, I know you did a lot of work with DMZ.
Mhm.
Do you have any tools that you would recommend for startups?
Oh, right now my favorite tool is Notion and Super.so. My absolute favorite tool right now because well, we built, I designed a landing page and we coded it. And it was terrible, like pretty terrible. I cannot even explain how terrible it was. And we were so focused on building the product that we didn't have time to code our own landing page or our own website, right? So I didn't want to go through GoDaddy or Wix because I felt like the templates were just basic. And then I got an email from Notion and someone recommended Super.so to me. And I just saw their templates and I was like, shit, this is incredible. Like you for people who don't know what Notion is, it's a note-taking app, but it's just so much more than a note-taking app. It's like Confluence for note-taking. It's just pretty awesome. And then you can essentially take the link off your note-taking page. You can link it to super.so and it will essentially generate it into a website. So you can buy templates. One of my favorites was Cluster, and it's what we built our current website on. You literally type out like you're typing notes on Notion, and then it codes it and transition it into this beautifully built website. Um, Not many people know about this. I don't know how, but it's amazing. I built my podcasting website on it, and I built my company website on it. And I think more people should explore it because it opens so much creativity, way more than any hosting platform I've seen. You can embed so many things so easily, and I absolutely love it. So that's one of my favorite resources. Um, there's Confluence, Jira, Bitbucket. I usually discovered those for my dev team, which are also awesome. What else? Any no code, I'll say platform is awesome for startups. But yeah, that's my top one right now.
You're not the first person. You're the third or fourth founder I've interviewed to mention Notion, and a couple of them have built their first web pages on Notion before they moved them to other things, which is really interesting.
Mhm.
You have your own podcast. Can you tell us
Yes.
about it?
Yes, it's called Build with Gen Z, and essentially it's literally building with Gen Z. It's me as a Gen Zer talking to other entrepreneurs about really cool topics. One of my favorite interviews was with Chris Messina that is coming up very soon. Chris Messina is the inventor of the hashtag, the number one product hunter, as well as he is the head of BizDev for Public, which is a new crowdfunding platform that is incredible. Um, we had a really cool 2 hour conversation. So our podcast is split into 2 episodes with him. We talked about, decentralization. We talked about building as a Gen Z. We talked about his experience working with Google, Uber, Twitter, all of these amazing tech companies. I've also interviewed one of my other favorite episodes. Is actually my first episode with Joshua Franseco, and he built WeWatch, which went viral overnight on Reddit with 22,000 downloads, 1 million interactions, and it blew up very quickly. So talking about his experience building it and watching the app go viral, and yeah, we have some amazing interviews with such entrepreneurs from all over North America. We did pre-record all of our season 1, so we have an episode coming up every week. And then so essentially Build with Gen Z falls under the Gen Z.fm network. And within the Gen Z.fm network, we're going to have also a bunch of other podcasts. So we have one podcast that is coming up where we actually take very complex topics like economic topics, psychological topics, and we dumb them down or we make them more digestible, so that listeners who are part of the Gen Z population are able to start digesting these very intense topics and able to relate it to their own lives and start looking deeper into them. So we have a bunch of other cool podcasts that are coming up. But yeah, the network is called Gen Z.fm, and you can literally just type Gen Z.fm. And then the podcast is Build with Gen Z.
Yeah, and you can find the link in the show notes or click the chapter link in your podcast app that you're listening to. So what is next for you and uCast?
Yes. So we actually just did our first sale, and in less than a month, we got over $13,000 in ad requests, which in hindsight does not sound big, but it was very big for us because we didn't market it, we didn't talk about it. It was very organic the way we received requests, which told us there's demand for this, right? So the next steps is launching our controlled environment beta, really monitoring what that data tells us, the user feedback, understanding what needs to be built next and how we can improve the product. Our vision is to be really the #1 platform for podcast advertising and any social audio advertising in general. So we're building towards that. I'm very excited for the next couple of years. We just onboarded 2 more React interns that are helping us accelerate the platform, which is awesome. And yeah, keep an eye out for the winter to actually be able to try it out publicly. And if you want to be part of the beta, message me or apply on Monday. But those are our most immediate action items.
And where can people go and find out more?
ucast.xyz, or you can follow our Twitter, ucast at ucast media _, or you can follow our LinkedIn. We are more active on Twitter than LinkedIn, but yeah, we post daily on Twitter, myself and the company as well.
So go to ucast.xyz and sign up for the what do we call controlled beta? Sorry, the controlled beta. If you're into podcasting or want to advertise, if you want advertisers or looking to advertise on podcasts, go check it out and see if you can sign up for the controlled beta. I want to thank you very much, Rand, for taking the time out of your busy day today, and I appreciate all your insights.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely.